Everyone knows that prayer is so important, but it's once you start praying that things start getting a little bit more complicated. Today, I'm going to talk about the right and the wrong ways to pray, and then I'm also going to give you 3 tips, and by the end of this video, you'll have all the knowledge you need to become a prayer expert. So let's get started. The first tip is to pray always. 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says, "Never stop praying." Pretty simple verse. My mom told me once, she told me like this the other week, that if you do something for 18 minutes a day, every single day for a year, that's only 18 minutes a day, every single day for a year, you'll become an expert in that field. So that applies to pretty much anything. So why wouldn't it apply to prayer? Praying a bunch and praying like for actually a good amount of time rather than just like thanking God for your meal or, praying before bed for a few seconds, praying for like an extended period of time and praying every day for like at least 5 minutes. That is going to make your prayer life feel a lot easier, a lot more relaxed, and a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like authentic. Consistency really is key when it comes to most things, and that does not exclude prayer. I remember I used to pray not too often, and when I started actually trying to make prayer a habit and make it something I did quite often, it got easier and easier and easier. Another thing I'd like to ask you is think of your best friend, your closest friend. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, whatever. How often do you talk to this person? You probably talk to them more than once a year, more than once a month, more than once a week. You probably talk to them pretty much every day, maybe a little bit less than every day, but your closest people to you are probably going to be the people who you communicate with the most and who you talk to the most. The more you pray, the closer you are going to be with God. And you can't just expect this super close relationship when you haven't talked to God in like 3 months. Speaking of the friend analogy, when you're talking to your friends, is it usually just you chatting to them? No, usually they'll reply to you. Which leads me on to the next point, which is listen to the Spirit. Is your prayer more like a conversation or more like a monologue? I feel like for the majority of people, prayer seems like it's a monologue. It's like, I'm just spilling my thoughts to God, maybe asking Him for a bunch of things, and that's pretty much it. We actually have to give God room to speak. But that brings us on to the point of like, how do we know if it's God speaking and stuff like that? I'm actually going to make a video on that next week, so subscribe if you don't want to miss how to hear God's voice. You have to be listening for God's voice. Let Him speak. Have you ever had it where somebody's just like talking to you and they just keep talking and talking and talking? They don't pause. They don't ask you questions. It's just them talking. That's kind of a boring conversation to have because you're not doing any of the talking. You're just listening. And for sure, it's fine to talk to God. Like, God wants us to talk to Him. But we can't just be talk and expect to get super close if we're not listening to Him. Part of praying is listening. And how do we do that? For me, what I do is anytime during my prayer time, maybe at the end, maybe at the beginning, maybe in the middle, I'll just be silent, sit in silence and say, God, if you have anything to say to me, I'm listening. If you have anything you want to teach me or you want to tell me, if you have anything you need me to do, I'm listening, you can say it. And sometimes I hear Him and sometimes I don't. And it wasn't something where it just immediately I was able to hear His voice. It took lots of practice. It took lots of consistency in prayer. And soon I was able to hear His voice more often, more frequently, and more clearly, where I'm not any longer guessing, is this me? Is this God? But like I said, more on how to tell God's voice in the next video. Another way to listen for God's voice is to ask questions. Psalm 27:7 says, "Hear me as I pray, O Lord. Be merciful and answer me." This can mean a couple of different things. It could be God answering a prayer by giving to the psalmist, which is David, what he asks for. But it could also be answer in a different sense, where it's like, God, hear me and answer my questions. Something that you can do during prayer is ask God a question. I think a lot of the times we're afraid to just go for it and ask God, hey, is this something I should be doing? God, why do I feel this way? Or things like that. Just any question. You can ask God anything. Something you don't understand, something you're working on, whatever you want to ask Him, you can ask Him. And just listen as well. Because part of a conversation with people is you often ask questions, they'll respond. They'll ask you questions, you'll respond. You talk, they talk. That's the same thing with prayer. You can do all those things in prayer. If you have a question, ask God and listen. And the final tip is to be who you are. Who knows you best? That's a question I asked before. Who's like your closest person to you? Now, I want you to think, what do you talk to them about? Prayer is often treated as a please and thank you time where you're practicing your manners. It seems like it's amazing to ask for things and to thank God for things. I'm not telling you to stop, but I am telling you to add on a little something extra. And what you should add on is a little bit of deep conversation. Talk to God about what you're feeling. Talk to God about anything you want. And that's how you build a relationship. I don't build a relationship with my friends by saying please and thank you. I build a relationship with them by asking them questions, telling them things that might be troubling me, and then they'll do the exact same thing. It's reciprocated, so that's what it should be like with God. Psalm 13:2 says, "How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand?" This is King David talking to God, and you can see he's not putting on this front that he's perfect and he has everything under control and he's so holy. He is explaining what is troubling him and what's on his mind and what's on his heart, and that's what we should do in prayer as well. You see Jesus do this as well. You don't hide your emotions from God. You can't hide it anyway because he knows everything. So be real with him. If you're feeling sad, talk to him about it. If you're feeling happy, talk to him about it. We don't have to hide our emotions from God because he is the one who created our emotions. So he understands better than anybody. Following these tips has made my relationship with God so much better. It's made me so much closer with him, and it's going to also help you. So I really urge you to take everything I've said and kind of think about it, apply it to your life. If you're looking for a little bit more on prayer, I'd recommend going straight into the Bible. The Bible is the best place to start if you have questions about anything in life. Read John chapter 17, and it's actually one of Jesus's prayers. So if we can learn from anybody, it's always best to learn from Jesus. And he was human. He is human, just like any of us. So he prayed too. And so John chapter 17 is an amazing chapter if you're wanting to learn about prayer. While you're reading, look at its elements of emotion and how he's asking God of things and he's talking to God about things. Just know that God wants to hear from you. He wants to speak to you as well. It's up to you now. You have the opportunity to have consistency in prayer and to work on prayer and to invite God into your life all the time. And I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you learned something new. Bye.